Well, good evening, everyone. I'll welcome you all to the December 2024 meeting of the Davis Police Accountability Commission. I'll take an opportunity now to make sure my phone is silent so that doesn't happen in the middle of the meeting. I'll go ahead and do a roll call. As we previously noted, Commissioner Griswold won't be able to join us this evening, and we're hoping to see Commissioner Escamilla Greenwald in a second. Commissioner Cannon? Here. Commissioner Wilson? Here. Commissioner Blake?
Here.
Commissioner Sherman?
Here.
Myself, Commissioner Horton, I am here. Does anyone want to make a motion, for approval of tonight's agenda? So moved. Is there a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion passes. Let's see, brief announcements from staff. Kelly.
Good evening, everybody. I hope everyone had a restful and lovely Thanksgiving. We are now somehow already in December, so I'm not sure when that happened. We do have a council meeting tomorrow evening, and I want to just mention a couple of things about it. I did send an email out to all commissions, you guys included, on Wednesday with information about the one item that is from the subcommittee, the council subcommittee on commissions about the tasks. You guys talked about that at the September meeting, I believe. So that if anybody is interested in that item, that is going forward tomorrow. We will also be saying goodbye to Councilmember Will Arnold at tomorrow's meeting. And then we will be doing a swearing in for incoming Councilmember Linda Diaz at the December 17th meeting. In January, if you can think to 2025, in January, the council, probably at the later meeting in January, will do their new council liaison assignments. Sometimes that means your council liaison will change, sometimes it stays the same. I don't know yet. So just FYI that those things are on the horizon. That is all that I do have one actually other announcement. A former commissioner, John Meyer, I don't know if you guys saw, but he was acknowledged in the Davis Enterprise. He graduated, well, he stepped off of this commission because he had signed up to go to the police academy, and the meetings conflicted with the meetings of this group. He graduated, and I think I can say his age because it was in the Enterprise. He graduated at age 77, which that's pretty awesome. So kudos to him, and wish him well in whatever endeavors come next.
Thank you. Any commissioner announcements? Go ahead.
No, I just wanted to follow up with you, Kelly. As far as our feedback to the council on the proposal for commission's agendas, can you tell us what happened to it and where that stands?
Sure. So the feedback was actually to the subcommittee. And so the subcommittee got your specific feedback, which for this group was a motion that you recommended or wanted to continue to do things kind of the way you have been doing them, with the chair and vice chair working with staff to come up with the agenda. The other commissions had a variety of different ways they provided feedback. I think this was the only commission that had a specific motion. It kind of blurs together after going through most of them. So that all of that information together was summarized in the report that goes to the full council. It's not spelled out that each commission did this. It gives an overall summary of the general concerns and questions and comments that the commissions had. And then the subcommittee is still recommending a change in the process of how a commission-oriented task would be placed on an agenda for a commission. But it's hopefully a little bit simplified from what you guys saw originally. I think you were one of the earlier commissions to meet. So if you are interested in the staff report, you should take a look at that and see what's there. It's actually more of a subcommittee report than a staff report, but same format, and it's in the commission agenda packet. If anybody needs help getting to that or wants me just to send you the hard copy, I'm happy to do that. They will decide tomorrow as a full council if they are interested in the subcommittee's recommendation or some derivative of it or nothing at all. It's really up to the full council to decide what they want to do. Does that answer your question, Mary? Or?
Yes, but I will follow. So did they ever come up with a concise reason why they were wanting to change what the current process is? Because I think since maybe we were earlier, we really didn't get rationale as to why they wanted to change.
So without getting too far into having a discussion item on this, I think the reasons, I think that they're stated in the report, but the reasons are the council would like to know what their commissions are doing and what resources they're using. They're not trying to go into this with an intent to say no to commissions. That wasn't really what they were trying to do. And then standardizing the process, I guess, is I think what we've put in the report, so that all commissions are doing things in a similar manner, because right now they're not. So those are the couple of reasons.
Okay, thanks.
Questions for Kelly's report or commissioner announcements? Commissioner Sherman?
I have a couple of things. One is I do have a combination of comment and question, very much Mary, along the lines that you're going here with the changes proposed. I have a feeling of the wind rushing by with the railroading of this proposition, with little or no input from the commissioners, although I do recall we had at least one conversation in our meeting a few months ago, but I don't know if that even was transmitted to the council. I would like to make about a 1-minute comment here, which is that commissions have well, actually, I'm quoting Josh Chapman, Mayor Chapman here. What he said was, commissions have a critical role in the community and serve at the direction of the city council. Commissions study issues within their scope of authority, analyze and recommend policies and programs, and serve the public forums to hear resident interests and perspectives. That was in a release from Mayor Chapman's office. It went on in a little more detail, one more paragraph. Commissions help provide the city council with their input and recommendations on a variety of projects or issues, said Mayor Josh Chapman. With the general plan being updated soon, commissions will take a leading role in community engagement and will help collect feedback from residents on key elements in the plan, such as open space, land use, housing, and conservation. We value the expertise and dedication of our commissioners. I'd like to underscore that one. We value the expertise and dedication of our commissioners to help improve our Davis community by supporting the efforts and projects of the City Council. So I would add 1 or 2 points of my own to that. I think that recruitment for commission participation will be made far more difficult because of the motivation that would normally be reduced. I feel, and I'm confident my partners here feel, that we can make a contribution, we can think about things and discuss them in our meetings. Sometimes we even have some meetings, committee meetings within the commission, and we come up with proposals. We've been doing that consistently now for 7 years. They are, over the last 5 years, they aren't as dramatic and they're not new headlines that they were the first two, but I think that they have been important. And so I endorse very much what you're suggesting, Mary, is that we have not, as far as I know, been given a coherent reason why this change should take place and how, and those who think it will be an improvement, I think owe us the courtesy of explaining and letting us know the thinking.
Okay, folks, I know there may still be big feelings on this, but this is the time for announcements and we can't get into this. It's not on the agenda for tonight. If you have any interest in coming and speaking as an individual tomorrow at the council meeting, you're welcome to do that. And you can always, of course, send an email to the council anytime between now and tomorrow if you want about the topic.
Just to clarify for people's understanding, the item on tomorrow's agenda is sort of final pass on that sort of section of the structure.
Yes, there's a part A and a part B. Part A has absolutely nothing to do with this commission. It's about tree appeals. Part B is the subcommittee bringing back their thoughts and recommendation to the full commission for the full council for their action or feedback on the commission initiated tasks. I'll get it straight.
Is there, is it already, put together? I mean, is there a motion on the floor? I mean, have they passed anything yet?
No, the subcommittee is bringing a recommendation to the council, and but I don't know what the council will do with it. It's up to the full council to decide.
A lively meeting tomorrow. Any further commissioner announcements?
I have a not directly related comment that I'd like to make tonight, if I may. Going into the meeting.
I'm sorry?
Going into the meeting tonight.
Yes, I just want to sort of highlight the thing that Kelly said earlier, that we don't want to get too deep into it, or we don't want to get at all into a discussion.
I'm
Okay,
off that
go ahead.
topic.
Yeah, go ahead.
Be more general.
Okay.
That I would like to say. I just would like to share a little bit of my mind with my colleagues on the commission. For whatever it may be worth, it will take about 1 minute. By coincidence, we're meeting for the first time since Election Day Eve. In a scant 4 weeks, a pall has descended upon our movement for criminal justice reform and police accountability throughout our nation. Pessimism and a profound fear has fallen upon us. For those of us on this commission, the DPD, and for all Davis residents who look to us for guidance, I suggest it is a time not for resignation, not for surrender to the proverbial dark side, but an opportunity to renew our determination, to cherish our accomplishments over the past 7 years, and to continue to remain a bridge between our fine police and the community that they serve. Police accountability can be a cornerstone of quality of life for this commission's clients, all the people of Davis. That is, the commission's clients are all the people of Davis. Young, not as young, families and individuals of every background and ambition. Our unique or special needs need to be considered. Our agenda items tonight are meeting with Chief Henry and our discussion leading to a recommendation to City Council on a proposed change in the role of commissions provide us with an opportunity to continue our efforts to fulfill our mandate. I'm excited about the future, and I hope we can all remain hopeful and productive.
Thank you. Any further commissioner announcements? I'll take my own opportunity to point out, I know we've sort of had some discussions in the past about sort of the line between us and the now I guess the Transportation Commission. But it is in the month of December, National Impaired Driving Prevention Month. So something that I think has perhaps a cross section between our commission and theirs. And then also this week, the first week of December, is Older Driver Safety Awareness Week. So
Did you bring that up specifically?
no. I looked up, as I usually do, observances for the month of December, and those were the ones that I thought were applicable. No, no. Just two general things that we should be aware of in town, I think, and, sometimes, we do talk about the degree to which people are aware of various, public safety services that PD offers. I'm thinking of I know it's not called Life Alert, but in my mind, it's like, oh, the Life Alert thing. The thing that most people in Davis are not even aware exists, but I think could be very helpful, to many folks. Anyways, I think there's lots of tools and programs and services that are available, both for preventing impaired driving and for making sure that all folks, including older drivers, are driving safely. Just two things to highlight at the beginning of this month for no apparent reason for our membership. Let's see, I note that I saw that Vice Mayor Vikla was here a second ago, but I know that I didn't see Councilmember Partita with us today. So no council liaison announcements, at least at this point. Would you say, Rob?
I said I didn't even recognize that it was Bob Booth.
Oh.
I'll give up.
I'll move on to a general public comment. Any general public comment at this time? I know Kelly noted that not Kelly, no, before the meeting started, I was talking with Commissioner Bliss and Commissioner Sherman about how we received some emails between now and the last meeting, which we, of course, always love to consider. But with no general public comment, I'll move to our consent calendar and our minutes from the last meeting. Does anyone want to make a motion to approve the November 2024 minutes?
Moved.
Is there a second? Any further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
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 All those opposed, please say no. Any abstentions? All right, and it's approved. Moving on to our police auditor update. Do we have some screen? The man behind the curtain. Well, Mike, we're glad to always have you with us, either in one form or another, in a rectangle or in person. I'll leave it to you to let us know what's going on in the various police accountability realms.
Thank you, Chair. Hello, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Maybe the most interesting thing about this part of the agenda is where I'm zooming in from, which is Waikiki Beach in Honolulu, Hawaii. Hence the tropical shirt. I'm here on business, which is even more unbelievable. The Attorney General has asked us to look at one of their law enforcement agencies, which we're going to do an audit for. So that's where I am. So I'm 2 hours behind you guys instead of on your time zone. But what I don't have a whole lot. I know we have the chief here for the meeting, and it's great that he's there. The only thing I would update you on with regard to our log that you haven't seen in a while, as a result of our conversations with Chief Henry and Lieutenant Beckwith, who has now gotten the responsibility of conducting the internal investigations. We're going to have I think, a more streamlined way of providing updated information to you all through the logs that we have provided over the 4 or 5 years I've been doing this work. But they'll be more timely. And in January, you'll see what I'm talking about. But what we did learn also is that we got one completed case that we have reviewed and are working on writing up a report on. That'll be presented to you at your January meeting. We are also advised that there are 4 other cases that are in the pipeline. One of the cases has been completed, but is still pending the review by the chief. The other 3 are pending investigations. And so the log that we will compile in January will have more information about those cases as you've seen in the past. So I think this is a good step. I think this faster turnaround will make our responses to reviews of the investigations more timely. And we'll also provide you a mechanism where you can more timely track what's in the pipeline instead of waiting till the end of the calendar year for this information to be provided. It'll be provided more contemporaneously on an ongoing basis. And that's all I have for today. But I certainly can answer any questions you all might have.
Thank you. Mike, any questions from the commission? So I just, as a general interest, question for me, you're doing this work on behalf of the Attorney General of Hawaii, you said?
Yes, the Attorney General of Hawaii, Hawaii created a brand new law enforcement organization out of segments of other law enforcement entities. And so they've never really had, Hawaii doesn't have a state police in the same way we've got CHIPS. They don't have a CHIPS. So they created this CHIP-like organization, but it's had some growing pains. It's only been standing for about a year now. And so we are being asked by the AG to see whether we can provide some insight on ways to improve the organization.
Very interesting stuff. So I guess this takes me back to my announcement at the beginning of the meeting. You know, at this point, what is it? You know, traffic enforcement is still, you know, the responsibility of the police up and down the state of California. There's the bill that I think, actually this commission took a vote advising the council to support, if I recall correctly, SB 50, which would have at least reshaped some of the pretextual stops, and then also allowed some localities to explore some other avenues of doing traffic enforcement. So this is just my usual sort of quarterly check-in of like, hey, you know, if you hear anything about that being reintroduced, because I think when that didn't make it through the other chamber the last time, you said, oh, there's some legislators who are thinking about reintroducing that at the in the next session. And I know many state legislators start getting their packet together, you know, in the November sort of time frame. And so I imagine that even some of our incoming state legislators are going to know what they're going to be, you know, trying to push for anyway. So if you have already heard of, did Mike freeze? It looks good. I hope we can hear.
Over. Now that we have a better sense, although I think in cases, elections that haven't been called yet on the state side, but a pretty good idea what the assembly and be evaluated or consideration is being given as to whether to reintroduce bills that did not get enacted last session. So we'll see. But I don't have the information. I think I'll have more information come the beginning of the year about that. Yeah. Can you hear me now?
Can I suggest that you turn your camera off and then you're going to need to give us a whole recap of everything you just said?
Or at
I'll
least
try.
Sorry.
Just the last.
No problem.
Yeah, just keep 50 on.
Okay. I guess they don't have good internet service here in Waikiki Beach. They spend all of their energy on keeping the lights open for surfing at night. But what I was saying is that I think that in December and January, Dylan's right, that there will be a lot of discussion about what police reform bills are ready to be introduced or reintroduced. And we'll see what that looks like. I think we'll have a better sense for that in January. I do think that electeds read tea leaves, and that if they read the tea leaves on what the voters decided to do with some of the initiatives and propositions, I think that there may be less energy or enthusiasm for police reform this coming session, but that's just speculation.
Well, you know, I generally wouldn't want to lean too heavily on speculation, but when voters in California have an opportunity to get rid of slavery and they don't, you know, I think that speculation might be kind of warranted. Any other questions for Mike? All right, thank you. I'm sorry, public comment on the, police auditor update? Okay, thank you, Mike, and, have a lovely, I guess, non-alcoholic drink because you're on the job, on our behalf.
Enjoy.
Thanks all.
Bye-bye, thank you.
Okay, so let's, take us on to, our regular item 7A, which is our, much awaited discussion, with our, new in this role, but not new to us, police chief. Just, I guess as a preface, and I know that, or at least Kelly said that she shared some of our, conversation at the last month's meeting with you. I think most of us have played at some point in elementary school or otherwise that game of telephone, where you say one thing and then they pass it along and pass it along. And some kind of way through just it getting passed along, it gets kind of changed. And I think one of the, as I explained to my colleagues who weren't there at the time at our last meeting, I think one of the unfortunate things about how we started off as a commission is I think we were having in one of the first couple of, months of the commission's existence, January, February, March of 2019, a discussion about certain people who might want to come to these meetings being sensitive to, uniformed police officers being present all the time or on a regular basis at those meetings. And then I think some kind of way that got to your predecessor to, hey, we don't want you at our meetings, which was definitely not, I can speak for myself, it's not what I meant. And I don't really think that was the full sort of thrust of the conversation. I think it just sort of was a miscommunication, and I think it unfortunately got us off to the wrong foot. And I think sort of the best, one of the best things, I should say, of this new era of DPD leadership is that we don't have that sort of situation between us. I think perhaps inhibiting the best possible collaboration between the PAC and DPD leadership. I think one of the things I also described at the last meeting is I would hope that, there's sort of an open door policy between the two entities, right? That, if DPD leadership is working on some new policy or program related to accountability or transparency, they might sort of tap us on the shoulder and say, hey, we're what are your thoughts on how we can do this in the best keeping with whatever that mission is, in that area. And so I look forward to, I think, I speak for all of my colleagues that I look forward to the new era of relationship between the PAC and DPD leadership. I assume you might have some comments to share with us, and then after that, I think we can, get into some questions and comments from the commission. Welcome.
Thank you, Chair, Commissioners, appreciate it. It's good to be here tonight. I couldn't agree more. I think it's important for us to be able to share space, to have open communication, and for me to be able to fill the gap, right? If there's something that needs to be addressed, or there's a misunderstanding of what a policy is or what our kind of philosophy is, I think it's key for strong communication, because that's going to be the foundation and cornerstone of how we progress and get better as a police department and as a city. So appreciate the opportunity to be here and look forward to being here more often, whether that's me or somebody from our department. We have a lot of people that are doing some pretty amazing things throughout the community. So it's always great to be able to highlight some of the projects that they're putting together, and especially when we're able to implement them and then hopefully see the impacts of those things. So absolutely appreciate it. So I did present a PowerPoint. Kelly was nice enough to share some of the questions. I thought I would go over a little bit of our strategic plan as the police department, because I think it really kind of answers a lot of questions around where we're trying to go and what we're prioritizing as things that the department wants to accomplish in the near future and within the next couple of years. So, and then I'll obviously allow for a series of questions, because I'm sure some of these will generate questions. So last year we put together.
Can you make it bigger?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Perfect.
So last year, we put together a 3-year strategic plan. A lot went into that process to try and garner information from the community as to things that they wanted to see from their police department, what were priorities for the community, the business community and the community in general. One of the big things that was repeated, I think, quite a bit, and I think is really critically important for the police department kind of going forward, is community engagement and partnership. So I know that can sometimes sound like a cliche, and it gets used quite a bit, but I think it is absolutely critical for the success of what we do. And I think for the end user, which is the community members' experience with the police department. We really want to be more engaging and more involved and more present as a police department. One of the things we tried to do is increase our social media presence, which is tougher than I think we thought it would be. But really what we're trying to do with that is to make sure that we're out there broadcasting kind of what we're doing, issues that we're seeing, especially if there's public safety issues that come up, that we're as quickly as possible, getting that information out to the community. Another thing we're working on is RIPA data on a dashboard, a public-facing dashboard. That's the Racial and Identity Profiling Act. So as you know, right now, California DOJ does have a portal which provides that information, and they generate a statewide report related to it. And what we would really like to see is that information on a forward-facing portal for the police department specific to Davis Police Department. So that way people can more easily access the information, process the information, and ask appropriate questions related to that information. Hate crime information. Unfortunately, over the last couple of years, and I don't think we're alone in this issue, is that we have seen an increase in hate incidents and hate crimes. And if you remember, a hate crime is where a crime is committed against somebody, but the intent is based on some type of bias or religion, sexual orientation, gender, whatever the case may be, that is identified as the driving factor for the commission of that crime. And hate incident is where somebody does something, states something, writes something, and it's definitely hateful in nature, but there's not quote unquote a crime associated with it. But we have seen an increase last year, and we're seeing an increase this year. So I think it's important for us as a community to make sure that we're presenting that information so people are aware and they have it available to them. This is a big one that we're going to be addressing going into this next year, is increased community meetings. So for me, I really like the idea of just being present in public spaces. So we're going to, next year we have 15 community meetings that are going to be scheduled, and we're going to do them by basically police beat. As you're aware, there's 4 police beats in the city, and we're going to do them essentially quarterly. The intent behind that, and we've obviously done a lot this last year, but we want to do them more frequently. We want to make sure that we're presenting information that's interesting to the public, but more importantly, give the community an opportunity to connect with our police officers in a informal setting, right?
I don't know what 4 police beats mean.
Oh, sorry. So as you know, right now the city's broken into 5 districts based on supervisor districts. The police department has a similar configuration, but it's only 4. And it basically works clockwise around the city, with South Davis being number 4. So sorry about that. But we want to do that a lot. Last year, I think we had 16 different community events that we participated in some fashion, and we really want to build on that. I think, a lot of times when there is miscommunication or a sense of unease around a police department, it's because people have not had an interaction that's outside of a, official kind of capacity. I want to really change that. I want people to be familiar with the officers that work in this city, to have some kind of level of interaction with them, to be able to ask those questions and answer those questions. I found that a lot of issues can be pretty quickly resolved through communication, whether that's, information coming to us that we need to be aware of or change, or us being able to present information to the community. We really kind of tried to jump into more regular involvement with the business community. And whether that's the chamber or Downtown Business Association, we try to attend their meetings on a regular basis. And our Sergeant Antonia Diaz, who's part of our community-oriented policing unit, she sits in those meetings, she gives updates, we receive information, and we were previously not doing that. But I think this is important as well. The business community has very specific needs and concerns. But if we're not present and we're not there, we're not going to hear it. So that's something that we're really trying to kind of focus on. And then involvement with our senior community, that we received a lot of feedback that they wanted more interaction from the police department. So we been doing a lot of just senior events where we university retirement community is one where we'll show up and we do coffee with a cop. And we'll stay for an hour and answer questions, give perspective on what we're doing, kind of things that we're trying to accomplish. Another thing that we're doing involved and related to that is bicycle training and awareness for seniors. We were lucky to get the Office of Traffic Safety Grant again this year, which does give us the ability to bring in some officers on overtime to do some of that training, which we're also doing with school-age children in the bike radios. As you all know, bicycle riding is a birthright in Davis. But we want to make sure people are safe and that they're doing it the right way. And then, yeah.
Question about bikes. Is there any kind of outreach with?
You're right.
Oh, thank you. Is there any kind of outreach or education, and this might sound funny, but for college students? And the reason I say that is they come from all over, and perhaps in towns where they're from, maybe stop signs are approached differently, but here it's just knowledge that, and it's not just students, but just knowledge that, you know, yes, you do need to stop at a stop sign if there are vehicles there. You should have a light. We want to be able to see you and not almost run into you. And so just wondering if there's any kind of effort for outreach. Thank you.
Absolutely.
I would second that, and also add to it scooters and e-bikes on sidewalks and, I mean, yeah, you can, we'll talk about downtown bicycle cops, but that's huge. Living downtown, the proliferation of scooters and e-bikes is amazing.
No, I completely agree. And I'm just going to jump to the next slide because actually I'm going to jump 2 slides ahead because it kind of touches on that. So yes, 100%. So we used to be invited to UC Davis during orientation to give an intro to the city of Davis, kind of the do's and don'ts. You can't walk around with open bottles of beer. If you're going to ride a bicycle, here's the rules that are required. Here's the safety concerns that we have. We haven't been invited this last 2 years, so we're in communication with UC Davis right now to get back into the fold on that because without question, that is a huge concern and complaint that we get is just failure to follow the rules of the road as a bicyclist. And it obviously is dangerous and it causes a lot of congestion issues. So we recognize that, and that is part of our Office of Traffic Safety grant. So we do a lot of operations where we'll bring in people on overtime to come out, and we really kind of try and focus on an educational approach. If we do see people repeatedly, violating the same vehicle code over and over again, then yes, we will issue a citation. But a lot of that too is contacting people at night who don't have lights, who maybe don't have a helmet, and we issue them out for free. We have a gumball machine inside of our lobby that you can walk in and turn it, no quarters required, and it will pop out with a bike light. And then obviously we do a lot of work with youth at schools to do bike rodeos, to talk about bike safety and the importance of following the rules and, wearing the right protective equipment.
I will say I saw one of those roadside, I think it was DPD rather than UCD PD out. I think it was in front of the Rite Aid on Russell and Anderson. And they had sort of a bucket out there and sort of, just stopping bikes who didn't have lights. And 1,000 years ago when I was a student, I recall being stopped at one of those, I think at some point. The one thing I did want to point out with regard to I don't know if this is a DVD operated sort of thing, but I think at different times, I don't know if this is right now, the gumball light thing hasn't been working. Like you'll turn it, and nothing comes out. So I don't know if that's right now, it may be fixed since that has happened, but I know, as I've been leaving city council meetings or police accountability commission meetings at the end of the night with other people who have bikes, and they'll be like, oh, you can get one there, and then, crank, and nothing comes out.
Yeah, we did discover a couple weeks ago that it was completely and totally stuck. Hopefully we've unstuck it, but I'll check it before we leave.
A minor thing, but it's.
No, it was actually, we had, at one point, I believe it was when former police chief was still here and, the city manager, and they were both attacking the machine, trying to get something to come out. Wouldn't work.
When it is working, it's excellent.
Yes, it is.
But the other thing that we're doing with this grant funding is DUI enforcement, and we did increase the number of DUI arrests that we have made during the last year. We're also doing a LiDAR training. LiDAR training is where basically a laser is used as a speedometer for vehicles that are traveling on a road, because that is also probably our #1 complaint is speeding. So the grant allows us again to bring in officers who are not committed to calls for service, so they can focus in areas where we get a lot of complaints and do directed enforcement. And then, of course, we have our 2 traffic officers who that's their primary mission, is to go out and either do education or enforcement stuff. We get a lot of complaints around schools, speeding, and issues with parking and drop off.
So I'm sorry, just to confirm, you said this is grant funded?
Correct. All these activities, for the most part, are grant funded. So last year we were successful in getting the grant to be able to accomplish it. This year we were able to get it again. The difficulty is with our staffing, which, as I'm sure many of you are aware, 4 officers work at any given time. If we have 2 calls for service in the city, that's 100% of our officers occupied. So being able to shave out time for what's called quote unquote discretionary or uncommitted time becomes problematic. Because as soon as they set up and they get ready for the LiDAR, call comes in, they have to leave and go to the call. So the overtime that is granted through this grant allows us to bring in officers for these specific missions. And then they're just dedicated to that, whether it's for a 4-hour shift or maybe even like a 6-hour shift. And then we actually are able to make some headway on some of that.
And so that's a combination of either enforcement or sort of proactive education kind of thing?
Yeah, definitely. It's probably a ballpark 50-50 split. So for bicycle stuff, a lot of what we do is education. People just aren't aware. So if we do stop someone, it's more of a communication of, hey, this is what you can do, this is what you can't do, and you need a light, here's a light. But for speeding on roadway stuff, we get a lot of people who are 40-50 miles over the posted speed limit, and we just issue a ticket.
I mean, I'm on Anderson and Covell, the other end of, and so, I mean, I'm frequently 3 o'clock in the morning, the loudest, souped up, sports car running down, Covell, easily, 40 miles, over the speed limit on a small town thoroughfare. So yeah, I think all my colleagues know that I'm not necessarily an enforcement advocate, but I do think, you have to sort of make the best possible choice you can at how to, handle those things. And I think, having more of the weight of enforcement be towards the driving and having more of the weight of the education be towards the bike, seems like that's a reasonable way of addressing that.
Quick question.
Absolutely, Commissioner Sherman.
Go ahead. I'm very concerned about this. I am literally afraid to drive in Davis at night. You can blame it on my age, you can blame it on any characteristic that you want, but I think it's a very serious danger that we have. Just driving here tonight, an hour ago, I counted 10 bikes that I passed between Pole Line Road and this building. It's not a lot, wouldn't amount to anything in a larger city, but because there isn't much traffic here, I was able to spot everyone that came into my vision. And I would say that two of them, I was careful about this because I planned to report it to you. I think 2 of the 10 had adequate lighting, and essentially they were red lights on their backpacks so that they could be seen from front and back and from either side. 8 others were varying degrees of dangerous, including 3 or 4 that really were invisible, except when my headlights picked them up. So depending on the way the traffic is coming and so forth. And I live in fear that we won't really take this seriously enough until somebody's life is either ended or severely marginalized from whether it be a driver or a bicyclist. I know that we have a social issue here because college students and high school students tend not to be they think they're invulnerable, or if they think about it at all, mostly I think remembering my own children, remembering my own childhood, I think mainly kids don't think about it at all. It isn't that they set out to be careless or that they don't think it's important. So I feel as if the opportunity lies in the schools because they go to school every day, and a major part of the driving bikes that they do, or cars when they're in them, is related to going and coming from school and related activities. So I'm wondering if we couldn't get really serious with the public schools in Davis and with the university to do now the things that we would do if we have the tragedy. And I feel as if it is essentially inevitable that eventually we'll have the tragedy. It's when I see and I drive very little in the dark, I really try to avoid it, but when I do, it seems to me that we're just taking a huge risk. Depending on the car driver is depending on the bicyclist is depending on the car driver, and we can't depend on that. We need some kind of an education program, as Dylan has referred to, with the cooperation of the school district and the university. But I think we also have to introduce some kind of tangible penalties. And I'm not for putting anybody in the can, and I'm not interested in big fines that people will have a hard time. But maybe some kind of publicity that would be an embarrassment would be effective. That's worked well with other social problems. But I really am immediately concerned with this. I will be concerned with it when this meeting ends and I have to drive back. I drive very slowly. I keep my eyes on the right side of the road. I've been driving for 85 years. I know how to, what goes on. I'm very careful, but I see dangerous, precarious situations in the making every time I drive that. Sometimes when I drive in the daytime, but that's more extreme. One other quick point, if I may. I looked at the budget involved with the grant, and I can't remember whether it was 14% or 17%, but it was one of those numbers had been allocated to bicycle safety. It's not enough. We either have to get another grant and put our heads together and figure out who would give us such a grant. Maybe the bicycle industry, maybe who knows what it might be. But we need to get a lot of money, enough money to put together a tangible program and publicize that program. So we tell everybody in town this stuff that I'm telling you tonight. I see it as an immediate, real danger.
I'll just say briefly in terms of, and I know you had a comment, question, I'm sorry, with respect to us being motivated to, get serious, I think, to use your words, on this, the outskirts of this town are sort of dotted with those memorial bikes. You know, and I was really so, cause I work out of town now, we work out of county in downtown Fairfield now. And so I'm not really in town during the daylight as much as I used to be. And so I was so shocked when I was, you know, coming from the grocery store across the street, you know, at the Save Mart that I go to seemingly on a daily basis. And I saw one of those memorial bikes right out in front of my own apartment complex, right there on Cobell and Anderson. And I was thinking, well, when did this happen? Who was this person? And so, you know, unfortunately, we've had those tragedies, and, you know, and here we are. And so I think, you know, we got to find other ways of motivating ourselves to, as you say, get serious on what is an important issue.
Who funds the grants that you get for this?
Office of Traffic Safety.
Is that a state program?
Yeah,
State program.
it's federal funding that comes through, it's facilitated through the state, yeah.
I'll just say one other thing, having raised two boys in this town, traffic court is a great motivator. Helmet laws, make a difference, and having to appear in court, even if it's just the traffic commissioner in Woodland is, it has an impact, I will say that.
I know from firsthand experience.
Yes.
Yeah, just to slightly divert from bike safety. You know, I don't know if this is post-COVID driving. Well, I think maybe it is post-COVID driving, but I've noticed, and I was telling my husband, and finally it's happened to him a few times, unfortunately. People are, green still means go, red still means stop. And it is just amazing, and I live in South Davis, how many people will drive past a stop sign. It's like, whoa, I pause, I mean, of course, at a stop sign, I stop, but at lights, green, I don't go right away, I pause for a second and look, because people, the opposite direction, just go through. It's like, wait a minute, my light's green, if I would have been going, I would have been T-boned. And it is frightening, because it has happened multiple times. And it happens in residential neighborhoods with stop signs, where people just drive through stop signs, or with lights. I see it, you know, around town in various areas. So, yeah, I know we don't or can't have a robust, traffic safety, program. I know we have one, and I know we need more money for that, but that's another issue. It's just people driving through stop signs and driving through lights when they're red. Is, I don't know if you've got complaints about that, but is it just happening to me? Do I see it? Do other people see it? But I've seen on, you know, Facebook or next door that people see it and are experiencing it. I don't know if there's any grants for that.
Yeah, and, you know, without question, a day does not go by where I don't receive an email related to traffic. And it has, you know, I've been in this job for 28 years. It has, any community I've been a part of, it has always been the #1 complaint. It's very visible. Unlike any other quote unquote violation of the law, people see it and it occurs right in front of them. And it's a safety concern. I think, you know, there's two big components to this. The primary one is education. And I think we do play a role in that, no question about it. We are part of the solution, but we're not the solution. And the other part is enforcement. And when we get very egregious violations, you know, we issue those citations. A lot of times we'll push that on our social media to speak to Commissioner Sherman's kind of point of, I'm not a proponent of like calling somebody out and embarrassing them or shaming them on social media, but we will talk about, hey, this person was driving 40, 50 miles over the speed limit and their car got towed as a result of that. With the intent that somebody maybe sees that and then thinks twice about doing it, because ultimately at the end of the day, if I never had to issue a citation, if we as a police department never had to issue a citation, that would be an absolute win. One, I'd write a book and sell it. But yeah, I mean, really what we want is for people to be safe. That is the whole goal. I just want people to be safe. So we're trying to address it in all the outlets that we can, and that's why we aggressively went after this grant funding. Because we do see the value in it and the importance of it for this community, because that is my biggest concern. I'll be honest, there's not a day that goes by I don't think about, oh man, somebody gonna get hit on a bike. Because we have a lot of people, unfortunately, not a lot of people, but very higher than probably acceptable level of people that are out there driving somewhat dangerously. And so we're trying to address that to the best of our ability.
Thank you so much for prioritizing that, because Sacramento unfortunately has had lots and lots of pedestrian hit and runs. I think within the last month, they may have had 4 people seriously injured, some died. And so it's just been very serious, and I'm glad we're taking it serious, taking it seriously with regards to just traffic safety and bicycling especially. Thank you.
Yeah, I live across the street on the corner of 6 and B, and I can tell you what time it is when the campus is open from the high school students. And I foresee, and I've seen it in the past in a different situation where a car has fishtailed and hit the fence, and there's little kids out there playing. It might be to an advantage that the schools remind students that they only have an hour. And because I can tell you exactly what time it is by when I start hearing the cars turning that corner. So it might be a good idea maybe to patrol that during lunch hour.
Yeah, and we try to, especially during morning drop off, we try and make a very strong presence. And it's a very visible one with the intent of, hey, let's be considerate. Let's make sure that we're staying safe. We have kids out. We don't want to see anybody get hurt. And we have a very good working relationship with DJUSD and making sure that we communicate issues. So if we're getting complaints, I am not shy about reaching out and making sure that they're communicating those complaints to their students.
But even just maybe patrolling sometime across the street through the lunch, because I think what they're doing is they're cutting down B to avoid the light. I mean, cutting down 6 to avoid the light on B. And like I said, there's that preschool here, so there's young children playing in that yard, so.
Agreed.
I would volunteer, and maybe 1 or 2 of my colleagues would as well, to form a committee of this commission to consult with you, Chief, and whomever you feel would be an appropriate person on your side to work with us, and maybe begin to think about tangible programs that we could undertake and publicize. Just as an example, a couple of things that I mentioned, I think, in this room previously, but they come back to mind. One is that I saw that somewhere in the country, for bicycle safety, they were, I don't know if it was required or encouraged or just what the details were, but the young people on bikes, well, all people on bikes, it isn't just students, we should remember that. There are a lot of older people who are on bikes in this town, but we think of them as being more responsible, and they probably are. One of them was a kind of a tunic thing, which was a piece of white cloth, like a sheet, with a cutout for the head, so it sits on the driver's shoulders, and it just would reflect any headlights in the vicinity. Again, this would alert the driver to the bike. It wouldn't necessarily work in the other direction. Another one is to, in some way, I don't know if it can be required or encouraged in a very strong way with ostracism or some kind of maybe home confinement for a weekend for kids caught violating, would be to be wearing a helmet, and that the helmets be either white or silver, because the black helmet is essentially worthless in this situation. So, as a way of moving ahead, Mr. Chair, if you think it's an interesting idea, if my colleagues do, maybe we could form a committee of a couple of people to work with your committee that you would suggest to work with you, and we would maybe sit down and have some specific meetings on this topic. Agreeing as a premise that it is a problem, which is important. And then what can we do about it? Up to and including getting more grant, more money to do more. It takes an effort to do those things, and I know that there's competition for grant effort. You can't be trying to get everything at once. But I'm thinking that if we put out some publicity about what we're doing, the Police Accountability Commission with the police department and with the high school and the college, that's 4 entities. And if we could put out some publicity on that, we could arouse quite a bit of interest. And it might lead to more money, more participation, and if nothing else, at least more awareness on the public part that this is a danger that we have to be thinking about immediately, not wait until we have a tragedy.
So just in terms of our procedures, let's get through, I know you probably have a little bit more presentation to get through and then public comment. And then once we're on the other side of that, we can sort of figure out what the sort of path forward is. Any further, I just, a couple of just quickly, I just, well, one in defense of, native Davis kids, someone who, a big part of, that's how I actually met Cecilia in my time as an after-school program director. I feel like our sort of kids from Davis do a lot better with these biking safety things than, the devils like me from Los Angeles and other places with different biking cultures, or non-existing biking cultures. This being grant funded, all of these efforts in terms of education and enforcement being grant funded, you mentioned sort of aggressively pursuing that. It sort of makes me wonder, are there other opportunities, other pots of money out there, either from, well, federal funding might sort of shrink in the next little while, but other sort of areas of state funding, I know sometimes certain philanthropic groups might try to fund things for particularly like small town services, like a community like Davis. So I'm just hoping that, I know it's probably already on your boss to-do list, but I'm hoping that there's an effort to pursue, a larger pot of grant funding to maybe expand the service. As you can see from the emails that you are all, receiving all the time, from the comments from the commission, that is a big concern from, just essentially everybody in town. So I'm hoping that there's more dollars that we can put toward these efforts at some point.
Yeah, and I mean, honestly, it's not a money issue, it's a staffing issue. And so to do that, somebody has to come in on a day off to work these positions. And right now, we're also requesting them to work overtime positions to fill vacancies. So it really, that is one of the big issues. It's not that there's not enough money, it's we don't have enough police officers.
Okay, no, so I'm glad we got to that, because that was not what my understanding was earlier. So we don't have an issue financing the payroll for that overtime. It's finding officers who are available and willing to do that. Okay.
Yeah,
All right.
that would, if we expanded it anymore, because I think we're pretty much at capacity, kind of with the amount of money that we have, and then ask for officers to work those extra shifts. So I'm not sure it's necessarily a money thing as much as it is a staffing thing.
On the one slide that we didn't finish, you did have the word volunteers. Could that be things that volunteers could do?
Yes, it could be.
Oh. Okay.
We could definitely do educational stuff and hand out helmets and lights and all those things. Yep. So I'm gonna bump back real quick a slide. Crime reduction, obviously, crime reduction is a big concern for us. Some of the things that are in this strategic plan that are kind of addressing that is a focus on organized retail crime. So petty theft, we saw a pretty sizable increase last year in the number of reported petty theft offenses. As you're aware, Proposition 36 passed, which has changed some of that dynamic a little bit. The landscape, we're not sure entirely how that's going to unfold. But we've been really trying to kind of focus on that as far as processes when retailers were taking a lot of these theft reports. And then what they would do is they would file them with us all at the same time. So we're trying to change those processes. The district attorney's office started a program called Vibrant Communities, where we're trying to work more hand in hand with retailers, where they can put their own cases together. We kind of review them so we have awareness. And then they file them directly with the district attorney's office, because we had several cases where there were individuals who had been committing organized retail crime in multiple counties and were responsible for substantial amounts. So I think it's probably a smaller number than the community probably believes, but they can be kind of prolific. So we're trying to focus on that. Obviously, we're trying to find better ways to identify repeat domestic violence offenders and really try to integrate some type of intervention earlier to prevent the likelihood of reoccurrence or occurrence at all. We're trying to explore new technology. Obviously, technology is moving at a rapid pace. I think everybody's very interested by AI and what does that look like and how do you integrate it and can we integrate it into law enforcement? So we're trying to spend some time kind of identifying what technology can we possibly integrate to increase the effectiveness of the officers that we have. So full staffing, we have 60 officers. West Sacramento has 72, Woodland has 72, and West Sacramento is looking at adding 7 more. So they obviously have bandwidth to accomplish some things. I feel that, we can probably do more with the amount that we have if we're able to start to integrate some technology, but it's just really a matter of what that looks like and is it appropriate for our community. Promote the bike registration program. Continue to expand our CPTED, which is crime prevention through environmental design. Our goal is to always try and prevent crimes. And so sometimes just simple measures can do that. So we've been trying to train more people in CPTED techniques so that they can reach out to business communities or homeowners and provide some guidance on things they can do to kind of improve the security of their property. And then fentanyl is, still obviously a pretty concerning issue. So we're trying to better track the number of overdoses because right now, as a county, we really only track the number of deaths, but not the number of overdoses. And so trying to gauge how severe that is in our community is very difficult because that information goes to a lot of different groups and a lot of different entities. And it's not really compiled. So we're trying to figure out how we can better compile that information specifically for the city of Davis. And then we did this month actually launch EMD, which is Emergency Medical Dispatch, which was a huge lift. And Deputy Director Gene Lyon was hugely important in getting that project rolling, which essentially every dispatcher is now trained when a 911 call comes in. Before we just sat on the line, we waited for the fire department to get there. We can now provide medical dispatch, which can be a lifesaver. So we can start providing resources to that individual and give them guidance on how to address that medical emergency before the fire department arrives there. And we're very lucky in the city. We have about a 5-minute response time, but 5 minutes can be substantial when your child is choking, and you can start to give guidance to that individual of how to address it. So that's a huge thing for us, and we're very impressed. But these are all kind of things wrapped around that area of crime reduction.
Good question. How many dispatchers do you employ right now?
12.
And are you full or are you looking for more?
No, we have one, it's in the hiring process, and we have 2 hard vacancies. So we have to have 2 on at any given time, because as you know, we dispatch to police and fire. And so, we're required to bring in a lot of people on overtime. No questions with that. I'll get to the last piece, which is employee health and wellness. This is an area that's super important to me. Recruiting into this field has become very difficult over the last few years. The pool of people who are interested in doing it has dwindled somewhat. And so trying to get people in, and more importantly, trying to get the right people in has been tough. And there's a lot of things that feed into that. But this job, you're exposed to a lot of trauma. And every day they're experiencing somebody's worst experience of potentially their life. And that's one call out of all the calls they'll take that day. When I got into this job 28 years ago, nobody talked about this. And I watched a lot of people leave the profession or leave with serious mental health issues. And so we are really trying to dig into this, because what I want to do is create an environment and a culture within the police department where the employees understand, where our members understand that this is important to us, and that we value them. And if they're in good physical and mental state, they're gonna provide good service. So I look at this as a responsibility that we have to the city, but also to our employees. And so we're really trying to kind of find some ways to better support our people and make sure that every day they're hitting that field and they're feeling supported and they're feeling that they're able to accomplish the tasks that we're asking them to do. So this is kind of a big centerpiece of what we're doing in this strategic plan. And, we're starting to see improvement in the industry, but I really want us to be kind of the leaders in our region related to this.
Could you describe the Georgetown Able program?
Sure, that's the Able Bystandership for law enforcement. And this is a program that was developed out of Georgetown University. And essentially, what they said was, hey, when there is misconduct, there's a couple components to this, but essentially what they said, when there is police misconduct, there's usually another officer there. And the shift with this program, what we did was we essentially did a train the trainer where we brought in 6 officers to train them on how to deliver this to every single person in our department. From dispatcher all the way down to community service specialists or public safety specialists. And essentially what it looked like is there's a couple components. One is that, hey, when somebody that you interact with on a daily basis doesn't seem right, it's okay to speak up and say, like, what's going on? How do I intervene appropriately? Because what we don't want is that person to be in a bad state. We're all human beings, right? We have bills to pay, we have kids to deal with, we have relationships to work with, we have all these issues. So when somebody, that doesn't seem right, something seems off, it is very appropriate for us to step in as a partner and have conversation around that. And try and discuss where they're at and how we can sort of mitigate that. The other component is, a lot of times when there is misconduct or bad decision-making in law enforcement, it's a little bit of group thing. And there's power differentials like every organization, like every group. Somebody's been on longer, they hold a different rank. And there's sometimes a tendency for people to follow along, even though something inside them says, this probably isn't the right thing to do, or we're not addressing this right, or there's safety concerns. They don't speak up till it's too late. We need to break that. We need to change that culture. It needs to be a flat organization, especially when it comes to incidents where they're at high risk. So really what this training did and what we have pushed out as an organization is everybody's a safety officer. If something doesn't feel right, if something doesn't seem right, if there's a safety concern, you have to speak up. If you care for that person, if you care for your community, you sometimes have to be the intervention, internally. And so, yes, last year we were able to get everybody trained up in it, and I feel very optimistic that it's a good culture change for law enforcement. We think it's important for us as a department.
Do you have refresher trainings in that? In other words, as it goes forward?
We do, yes. Okay. Open for any other questions that you may have that are not on the plan. Obviously, the plan is, it's on our website. You can go into it in more depth if you have interest.
First of all, thank you for being with us this evening. I have a couple that I've been trying to keep track of, so I mean, let you get through some of the presentation, but then I'll sort of let my colleagues go off and then we'll go through those. I guess these first two are more sort of comments / suggestions. You mentioned perhaps having people who are not yourself at some of these meetings representing the department about the great work that folks are doing. I think I speak for the entire commission, certainly myself, in that we really would encourage, not that we don't want to see you at these meetings, but getting to hear from some other leaders in the department, I think is really helpful for us and, getting an understanding as to how the department works, sort of what the culture is there, sort of what's people's perspective on things. And so I hope we can sort of see different aspects of that as we go forward. I always go back to Lieutenant Waltz, I think, who came in one of our early meetings in, I think, 2019 or 2020. No, we were in person, so it must have been 2019, to talk with us about the training process that officers go through. So yeah, again, hoping to see more of that. You talked about wanting to step up, social media engagement, and I certainly see that in the ways that you described on Facebook. As somebody who, you know, is of my generation, I've always thought it's kind of interesting that, DPD has a Facebook and not an Instagram.
We do have an Instagram.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay, all right. So up until recent, yeah. And so, yeah, I always sort of wondered what the, so you see, at least prior to that, you know, the city's main sort of platform, sort of picking up sort of things that PD would have ordinarily picked up on their Instagram channel. So I'm glad to hear that's a different thing now, because of course, different segments of the population engage in different things, and now there's blue sky and all that kind of stuff. And so, you know, who knows where everyone is now. To the first question, what you mentioned putting or a goal or a thing that y'all are currently working on, putting more information about hate crimes on the website. What type of information are we talking about? The number of incidents, what type of incidents, resources to sort of harden yourself from these things? Like what are you talking about in terms of information?
Yeah, I think, so we do report it obviously to the state. But I think it's also important to be able to give some definition as to what is a hate incident versus a hate crime. And then, yes, specific numbers to it. And then maybe trend over time, right? What does that look like? Is it increasing? Is it decreasing? Right now, we're seeing an increase. But, you know, I feel it's the community's information, it's their data. So I think when we have opportunities to be able to present that in a way that they can absorb it, it sparks conversation and question. And sometimes without that information, those conversations go undiscussed.
Right. And you mentioned the RIPA data, and I know we're certainly as a commission very familiar with sort of looking through that. And I hope that there is not only the sort of, you know, description of, hey, this is a hate crime or a hate incident, but also sort of, particularly if we're going to be talking about the rates of them, which types we're talking about. I think that would be not only interesting, but helpful to the community in figuring out how we, outside of the context of law enforcement, address these issues. If, you know, if we're talking about incidents of hate related to, you know, folks in the LGBTQ plus community relative to anti-Semitism, those are two very different sort of beasts in terms of phobias and isms. And so, you know, tackling them is different. You mentioned, oh, I'm sorry, I'll go ahead and move to Mary, and then I'll come back.
You mentioned dashboards a couple of times, and one of the things we, in this commission, have asked for is probably increased data. And there had been some discussions about an analyst, a data analyst being hired by your department. It used to be that the police department put out an annual report every year, and while it wasn't a lot of in-depth, at least it gave basic information to the city's citizens, and we haven't had that for about 2 or 3 years. So I'm just wondering, as far as the data analysts and your thoughts about that, is it a possibility, or is it one of those things that the budget has made so difficult?
No, I think it's absolutely a possibility, and I'm glad you asked that question. It's a great question. So yes, we actually so we did bring on a crime analyst. That position's been vacant for some time, but we did bring on a crime analyst about 6 months ago. You know, he is still kind of getting oriented to our data systems and extracting that data. But we just had a meeting regarding a, you know, annual report going forward. You know, we've traditionally kind of had it in a PDF format, and it kind of covers, you know, this is what this unit does, this is what this unit does. So we're trying to look at kind of refreshing that. But I think important things that, you know, we want to post on there are trends of crimes. There's a community meeting I go to where I don't get that question of what's going on with this type of crime. Is it going up? Is it going down? So we want to present that information. But we also want to highlight some of the other things that we do beyond that, right? Such as the traffic enforcement program, concerns that we're seeing related to whatever issue, more as an awareness. The annual report is great, and I think it's an opportunity for us to do kind of a recap of an entire year. But really what I want to move to is more of a transparency of data real time. So we're trying to figure out what the best avenue, what the best platform will be for that. But that's really kind of my long-term goal is, you know, hopefully people go to the website and they're able to look at data for their area. And right now, we do have a little bit of that with crime mapping through our CopLogic on our website. And you can kind of filter out what you want to see, what you don't want to see, date range, stuff like that. But I think that sometimes it can be a little cumbersome. It's a little bit clunky sometimes. So what we want to do is kind of refine that. So it's much easier for people to extract the data that they want to see because it is their data.
Well, and then my next part was, have you worked at all with the DA's data on commons? Because that's been one of the goals I haven't been able to accomplish. I really think that is a wealth. And it's like you go up to this point and then the DA gets it and he goes to that point. And how are you able to link, or are you using any of that data once it gets up there and charging and convictions and that kind of thing?
So, no, we don't. Our role is to present a case, to collect the evidence and to submit that to the district attorney. And then they have to make their own, you know, prosecution decision at that point. So, you know, do we track that stuff as far as, you know, what occurred with this case that we could file? Yes, absolutely. But I think from our aspect, the data that we want to report is stuff reported, which is going to be substantially higher than what actually goes to the district attorney's office. Because, you know, on a given year, we make 600 to 700 arrests, and the vast majority of those could be for DUI, the drunk in public, domestic violence, whatever the case may be. So, you know, what happens once it gets to the district attorney's office, it's tough to say. So really, I think for us, what we want to do is say, these are the reported crimes that are in the city of Davis, and this is how they're trending.
Because when I had seen, you know, went into Commons a bit, you could pull out the Davis cases, you could see how many were charged and how many were convicted. And I think to some extent, the citizens of Davis would also like to sort of have a sense of that too. But I understand why you say your stops were your stops. It's just, it'd be lovely to sort of get the full, because I do know they charge or they don't charge, and you don't have much to do with that.
One more and then I'll pass off to someone else. You mentioned, engagement with the business community as sort of, you know, parts of the town that you're looking to engage with more or continue engaging with. Given what I spent, you know, the other 2 years of my life doing, civically, I heard a whole lot of, no, I'll go ahead and say complaints. I'm going to try to find a different word than complaints, but complaints from folks in the business community, obviously about the unhoused population and sort of that nexus with downtown in particular. In one of the conversations that I had, a business leader downtown, you know, reached out. I think she actually reached out to Commissioner Canning as well. You know, saying, hey, I thought we had this new department and we did the Time for the Nine campaign. And so I kind of felt like I was going to reach out to the city and get some of those people to come and address this, you know, and they sent the police, you know. And so I guess I'm wondering specifically in that sort of realm of police and business engagement and collaboration, what, obviously if there's a public safety concern, then obviously y'all are a part of the conversation, but absent that, what is y'all's engagement with the business community relative to this, you know, issue with unhoused population?
Yeah, absolutely. So, and we're working right now to push out some messaging to the community in general, but the businesses in specific, related to how to appropriately submit concerns or complaints. If a complaint comes in through 911 during normal business hours, as you know, there's 2 members of the homeless outreach team. We have a mobile clinician that is on, and then of course we have police officers. So depending on how that complaint is relayed to the dispatcher, sometimes they may say, hey, is there an outreach team member that's available to go and respond to this incident and maybe connect with them, support them, link them to services, whatever the case may be. or maybe it's more appropriate for a mobile clinician. But sometimes that information comes in, it seems appropriate for the police officer to go out. So there are times where, we'll get a complaint of, hey, there's somebody sleeping in front of my door of my business and I can't get in. And this is a pretty common complaint. So yes, the homeless outreach team could potentially go out there. They may gain compliance, they may not. Sometimes they're not available, and obviously our goal is to try and support the business owners, and the police officer will go out and essentially kind of do the same thing. So the reality is we do have police officers on 24 hours a day, every day of the year. And sometimes that call comes in and we will send them out. Now, do I want to send a police officer to those calls? No, there's other calls that probably are better fit for a police officer, but sometimes they are the resource that's available. But we have the homeless outreach team on our radio system, and they have portable radios. So, we can send them a call and say, hey, there's a complaint of such and such. And oftentimes they will respond directly and deal with it. And there's also times where we'll do the same with our mobile clinician.
Is there like advice that you would have for someone who maybe wanted to get not a complaint, but like get that, to the city's attention, but would would prefer that not be a sworn sort of response, how they could maybe do that in a way that would sort of make that response more likely?
Yeah, it really depends on the exigency of the call. So there's really two options. You can go to My Davis and submit a complaint regarding, hey, there's an encampment that's next to my property or on my property or blocking a travel path. And somebody will eventually respond out to that, right? Because it's not monitored live. And so those would be circumstances where, hey, I really want somebody to address this, but it doesn't need to be addressed this moment. If the call comes in and it's like, hey, I need somebody to take action now, then that's really, we have kind of three options. If homeless outreach is available and can address it, great. If a mobile clinician is available and it's appropriate for them to address it, great. But sometimes it's a police officer. And so it really kind of depends on how quickly do you need the response.
Thank you. Other questions? Sure, Commissioner King.
Kelly, does the city have a license for Power BI?
Can you say that again?
Does the city have a license for Microsoft Power BI?
I don't think so.
Okay. It's a good system to,
We're working on trying to get that.
okay, because that's a good database built, a platform for data, because you can,
It is the reason I hired this analyst.
Oh,
Experience with BI, but we're also looking at some other platform options and stuff.
Okay.
I'm sorry, for the dummies in the room, can we talk about what this is?
Power BI is a Microsoft product that allows you to build dashboards and presentations that are very interactive. And and it takes data from, spreadsheets or whatever, so if I downloaded the RIPA data from the state, I could just give it to Power BI and design, and with a design that would allow you to slice it and dice it however you want and see what it looks like. That's all. It's just a data manipulation tool that Microsoft charges for, as usual. Okay, so my other questions have to do with, really only one. Last year, I think it was last year, the sheriff gave the city department, police departments in the county the right to permit people for concealed carry. I can't remember the number that he gave us then. It's very small, but I'd be curious to hear from you about if you're going to change that process, or if, there still hasn't been a change in the law in the state that I know of because of, what's that Supreme Court law about concealed carry. You're allowed to carry a weapon, and you may give a permit, or you're required to give a permit, I think. And I think we're required, the law now is it's going to change to require to give the permits. So I'd just like to hear from you at some point about, maybe it doesn't have to be tonight, but how many permits, how many applications, and how many that you gave out.
Yeah, yes, the law really restricts our ability to deny a CCW. You know, I have some questions that we actually brought up to the Attorney General about a month ago regarding that. Because we haven't experienced it, but other jurisdictions have. And so it's difficult. But we don't get very many here in the city of Davis, and the ones that I have personally issued, I mean, they're attorneys, doctors, professionals, and so you know, unless there's really some substantive reason as to why we're going to deny it, which in essence means they're a prohibited person, the state says you can't because of previous convictions.
Right.
There's not a lot that we can do to stop somebody from submitting and then thus granting. So.
Just sort of as a follow-up with that, I don't know how many gun-related incidents that you guys have on an annual basis. But the proliferation of firearms is, you know, quite concerning to myself and a lot of other people. I'm curious if you have, as part of your outreach to the community, if you have any curricular talks that you give about gun safety. I know there used to be gun locks in the lobby. I don't know if
Still is.
Still there, okay. I'd really like to see the police be very proactive about teaching people about firearms. You guys are trained, you have to certify, you have to, you know, do the whole bit. You know a lot about firearms and danger that they can, excuse me, present to the community. And it would be good, I think, to have the police department in front of firearm safety issues for Davis.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with you. And we have done some campaigns around safety and making sure that people are compliant with the law and that we provide equipment if they do have a firearm that it's safe. We also do a gun buyback program annually, where, you know, people can drop off their gun and we pay them for it, no questions asked, and then we take them and destroy them. So we do, luckily, as a city, we don't have a lot of firearm issues. But nonetheless, yes, I also feel that we have a role in, when we can, you know, getting weapons out of the community.
Thank you.
You mentioned crime prevention through environmental design, which I feel like I've heard like one or two mentions of before. I have to assume that a good chunk of that is cameras, right? No. Oh yeah, lighting. Yeah, I didn't hear what that. But yeah, you're right. Yeah, so I guess people are getting to what my question is. Can you talk about some of the non-camera parts of that? Because the cameras are like the most obvious, I think, part of that in my mind. But other sort of, if a business leader was listening right now, how they might, you know, make sure that they're, or you know, any location was less available to thieves and other property criminals.
No, it's a great question. There's a lot of stuff that can be done. Yes, cameras are obviously a highly recommended product to include because we solve a lot of substantial crime through privately owned video cameras. It's a witness and it gives us a lead that we would otherwise not have. But you know, appropriate lighting in a business, configuration of a business floor where the counter is, where other items are, windows, like exterior windows, are they covered by stuff where somebody passing by wouldn't notice a robbery occurring? You know, is there vegetation that blocks the entryway and we need to trim it? There's kind of a whole litany of lists that they go through of just little things that make the building structure less inviting for criminal conduct because they feel the likelihood of apprehension may be higher. And that's, you know, a great approach because a lot of these things aren't heavy lifts for a business owner or a property owner, but they can have substantial impact in the likelihood of a crime occurring there. And this can also relate to areas where we have maybe an issue with, you know, underage drinking and neighbors are complaining that, oh, these kids are always drinking in this quote unquote parking lot or whatever. And we can look at it and go, well, why is this area inviting? And is it lack of lighting? Is there obstructions? What things can we do to improve it so it's not as inviting?
And now I'm remembering why, I had sort of highlighted cameras. It was because I feel like in the, May stabbings incident last year, that either a lack of cameras or a lack of, people knowing how to get that footage to PD, or a lack of coordination and relationship being there, seemed like it was a weak spot for us. I don't know if that's just my layperson's perspective, but, and so it's made me think of, not that I'm trying to, set up some sort of Orwellian, surveillance state, but how we can have some better, particularly in terms of, businesses, how we can have a better relationship between some of the, businesses that already have existing sort of camera setups, and perhaps encouraging some of the ones that don't already to, make that a part of what they're doing.
Yeah, absolutely. And, technology is advancing very rapidly. West Sacramento right now is working with a software that allows businesses to integrate their camera into a system. And obviously the owner can turn off access or turn on access. But essentially what would happen is, let's say you have a crime that occurs at J and Fifth Street, and we have an idea that the criminal traveled a specific direction. It can then track every single camera that might have picked up the coverage or picked up the footage of the individual. And then they can download that video and use it as evidence to hopefully identify and put a case together. We have used this, obviously a much more archaic kind of approach, but as you remember, I think it was 2nd and F Street about a year ago. We had a pretty vicious assault where about 7 people assaulted 2 individuals in the intersection. Severely injured one of them. And what we did was we walked, right? And were able to pick up camera footage, which ultimately led us to the vehicle, which ultimately led us to the individuals, which ultimately resulted in an arrest. So, yes, I agree. I mean, there's always a balance. I'll be honest, like there's times where I'm not super hip on the idea of being captured on video. But at the same time, we live in an environment where it's everywhere. It's already everywhere. So I think finding ways where we can kind of compile that video sometimes for specific purposes can be beneficial, but it has to be taken with a balanced approach. And then, yes, I mean, I agree, having city public safety cameras in specific areas, we're often, the response we get from victims is, well, can't you pull the video? And we're like, we don't have video. And it's a look of awe, almost like you don't carry a cell phone. Why wouldn't you carry a cell phone? And so it is a tough thing, and the cameras themselves are not expensive, but the retention of the data can be expensive. And right now, government code requires us to retain it for a whole year. My preference would be, if there's no evidentiary value, we dump it in 60 days and we get rid of the video. But that's a whole nother conversation.
And I think to the issue of like the balance, I think if we're in the downtown space, there's a different, I think, expectation of privacy of walking down the street than it is if I'm on my own street where I live, right? Of course, there's a whole bunch of Ring cameras there probably, but it's sort of a different, I think, I don't have the same expectation of privacy when I'm walking down B Street in the middle of downtown.
You have to watch more British police procedurals. For the first thing they ask for, did you get the CCTV?
Well, no, this is what because I used to make fun of my mom all the time for watching these sort of A&E. Oh, she was a lovely mother of 4 until she snapped, and but now I spent the entire holiday, this past Thanksgiving holiday, watching those kind of things, and this sort of having to go canvass the neighborhood to sort of spot cameras and then ask the homeowners or ask the business owners, hey, can we get the footage from that? It seems to be particularly what a lot of small town PDs are doing. And here in, nearly in our Lord's year 2025, I feel like we should probably be able to do something better than that. So hopefully better things on the horizon there.
So I have a question about surveillance ordinance.
Sure.
Which comes up to us every year, and for you every year also. I'm aware that there's a certain workload associated with that. And because there are computer systems and body worn cameras and car cameras and all those sorts of things that you have to report on. And my thought has been, I think I got this from the Oakland ordinance and how they operate there, is that they report periodically during the year so that the workload isn't all at the end of the year. I've brought this up before. I don't know how you do it now, but it comes up once a year and then it goes to the city council. My thought was that it might be easier on you folks in the department, the analyst and whoever has to take all that boilerplate. Kelly does very well when she presents it to us, but rather than doing it once a year, Kelly, would this require a change in the ordinance?
Yes.
Okay. Well, okay, that's there, it's a thought. I mean, it's a, because, you know, it seems to me it might be, maybe I'm wrong, but it's not a workload issue. But between that and the military ordinance, militarization stuff, spreading it out might make it easier.
Yeah, so 481 statutorily, we have to do it once a year. The surveillance technology ordinance, we also have to do it once a year. For us, we are compiling that data throughout the year, so creating additional reports would probably be more time consuming for us than kind of doing it all in one. I think, you know, we don't often have anything new on there.
Right.
So we are kind of presenting like, hey, we have body cameras, but everybody knows we have body cameras, and I don't think anybody's ultimately concerned about it. You know, I do have concerns because 481 in the surveillance technology ordinance overlap on some things.
Mm-hmm.
And so we're kind of coming with the same product, presenting it multiple times for, you know, an ordinance to be passed by council. So it would be great to say, hey, if 481 requires us to submit this information to council and they need to approve it and then, you know, pass an ordinance in support of it, then do we need it in surveillance technology also? I don't know. That might be a way to reduce some workload, but either way, we're collecting the data. So.
All right. Well, I appreciate the feedback.
Yeah.
Thanks.
I just wanted to say, you know, thank you for the feedback on all of this. We've had these questions for some time. And I also want to let the commission know that I sent a letter to council. I mentioned it at the last meeting that I was going to do that about, now that we're going to be under a new administration, our country. They have mentioned that they're going to be, going after, undocumented folks, as well as those that may either appear undocumented, and there's rumor about them even revoking some people's, yes, yeah, birthright, what is it called, birthright citizenship, yeah, thank you, birthright citizenship. Anyways, I wrote a letter to council about that, and I was very happy to got a response about what we already have in place. And our new chief responded as well. I was very happy that you did. Thank you very much. Reiterating, I'm sorry, I don't have it off the top of my head, or I'm gonna call it a resolution. It's a resolution, Kelly, or is it yeah, it's a resolution that we already have in place. And I don't know if chief wishes to, if you can elaborate on that, but people in the community were concerned about that. And I was very happy to have your response, if you don't mind elaborating on it a bit.
Yeah, absolutely. I think this is a very important topic, and you know, I've had other community members express concern because of the rhetoric that's coming out of this new administration. And so, well, one, we're unique because we do have a sanctuary city resolution, but even beyond that, as a state, SB 54, which is the Value and Truth Tax, really clearly prohibit law enforcement from being involved in immigration to any extent at all, outside of a judicial warrant, right? And so, you know, detainers are always the big concern because they're administrative, and ICE can issue those at any time. So I think we have really good guardrails in place, not to mention is completely contradictory to good law enforcement. Because if we don't have trust, we're useless. We could have 1 million cops, we will get nowhere. The community has to be our partner, and for that to occur, there has to be trust. And so if we violate that, we are absolutely making ourselves ineffective. And so I think, even culturally, as a city, as a police department, we clearly say that, that we're not going to participate in that. And there's legal guardrails on top of that. So I'm actually going to be participating in an event in Woodland in January through the school district, answering these very specific questions related to immigration and what's the role of law enforcement, and is law enforcement going to be compelled at a local level to support federal initiatives, which we're not, and we're prohibited from doing. So, but I think it's an important topic.
Thank you. Have you had any discussion with our local district leadership about this? Otherwise, I can bring it up to them, because we have had some parents inquire.
No, I don't think I've had any at the DJ USD level.
Okay, I'll reach out if you don't mind and
Absolutely.
connect the idea. Thank you. It really is important. I appreciate you and others do too, the department taking it seriously, because it's people's lives and children are scared. And we have the university, students from everywhere, from different countries, different states. And we have the iHouse. And so we have a very diverse community, so really appreciate it. Thank you.
This brings to mind, I didn't have this one written down, but this brings to mind, I know the incoming administration has forecast that they are prepared to handle localities like Davis who aren't, running with the program, and, what they've sort of hinted at is sort of, we were talking about grant funding with regard to the state transportation grant earlier, talking about pulling back various DOJ, Department of Homeland Security grants that are given to local law enforcement agencies in jurisdictions where those localities don't comply with whatever, DOJ or Homeland Security is trying to do. Is there any concern about the federal government trying to affect the PD's pocketbook, for lack of a better term?
I mean, I'm sure that could be a potential. I just don't see it being a potential, because that would essentially be every law enforcement agency in the state of California, which would be extremely problematic for a variety of reasons. But ultimately, at the end of the day, if they want to deny grants, so be it.
As you said, it is very counter to law enforcement principles, but that wouldn't mean that they wouldn't do it. It's back to my written questions. You mentioned fentanyl, and I guess it does kind of dovetail with the last thing I was talking about, because you see this so much in the news. I watch a lot of conservative media just so I know what's going on in that space. Can you give a little bit more color as to the situation here in Davis with regard? Are we talking about intentional uses? Are we talking about accidental overdoses? Is this 5? Is this 50? Can you give a little bit more?
Well, it's actually a very good question that we're trying to kind of wrap our arms around. So we do see a pretty good number of overdoses. The problem is if somebody overdoses, they could get a Narcan response, and a friend could drive them to an emergency room. We don't capture that. Fire could respond for an unresponsive individual, show up on scene, determine it's a fentanyl overdose, and transport. We don't get that information. So trying to really gauge how significant it is tough to say. But we've had several incidents where our officers have used Narcan to revive somebody who has an overdose in the field. So is it an issue? It is an issue. When you look at the numbers of deaths related to fentanyl compared to any other drug, it's not even close. Again, I'm not a big proponent of like the enforcement angle of drugs. That really doesn't have great outcomes. But I do think, education's an important thing, but to be able to truly address that, we need better data. And we need to know what groups are most affected and how can we direct intervention and education to those groups.
Is there a way to, 'cause I know, when we're talking about paramedics, it's a company, relative to a state agency. But I think it's the same company for the whole county, right? And so is there a possibility of engaging with them and sort of saying, obviously there's gonna be some HIPAA concerns with regard to specific, information, but hey, what's the general number, just in terms of the calendar year, are we talking about 5 or 50? I would hope that there would be some willingness on their part to share some information to sort of, have everybody, oaring in the same direction with regard to what, you pointed out in your presentation and what we all sort of recognize a really rough issue on a lot of people and families, throughout the county.
If I could just add, it might be possible to get data from the public health department, because if these people go in emergency rooms, which often they are, it's gonna get reported to the public health rather than through the police. I mean, it seems, and maybe even HHS would know, in the county, rather than the police department. I mean, Chief Henry's issue is interdiction, finding people selling it and arresting them and dropping the flow that way, although that's probably a tough feat to begin with. But in terms of numbers, I bet you'd be better off talking to the public health and mental health people, substance abuse.
Yes, I'm gonna meditate on who the best person to ring the phone off the hook at their office. But I keep getting ideas from the different things that y'all are bringing up here. If they are, if for a good chunk, or if a plurality of the cases are accidental overdoses, is the sort of main thrust for y'all sort of catching the sales people? Because if it's an accidental overdose, there's no customer, no one's intentionally buying it. So is that y'all's involvement?
And just so I have clarity on your question, so most overdoses are accidental, and somebody doesn't understand the level of fentanyl that may be in the dose that they're taking. But yeah, obviously part of our role is intervention at the level of sales. We don't have a lot of those cases here, but we do have them. But I think, part of it is understanding how big the issue is, and that's really where it comes back to trying to figure out how do we centralize this data, because sometimes they don't go to a hospital and sometimes there's other means. I mean, we've encountered many individuals who get a Narcan and they're gone. They just hit the street. So, the one data point that we have that we feel solid about is the number of deaths, and that's high, especially compared to other drugs. So we know it's an issue, but without, the prevalence of Narcan has really changed the dynamic, because people that would have otherwise passed away are not. But that data is held at a whole variety of different levels in organizations. So we're kind of trying to figure out how do we maybe consolidate that data so we have better understanding as a community, right? How severe is this issue?
I'm back on to volunteers. I just checked the website because I was going to ask you what the volunteers are, and I know we're running out of time, so I don't necessarily need a list. But your website says that due to the current COVID-19 restrictions, our volunteer program is on hold.
Interesting.
Yeah. So maybe at some point when there's a list on there, we could be aware of it and we could see specifically, because I feel like when we were talking earlier about potentially education, I mean, something that we as a community can do for education, which would free up your officers to be doing other things. So anyway, you might want to check the website. And I know you said you want to increase it, so are you also looking at increasing the particular tasks that volunteers could be doing, or just increasing the number?
Yeah, a program we want to start, we actually just interviewed a few people to see their interest level in participating in, is the host program. where, you know, somebody's downtown, they kind of wear this yellow, jacket that, you know, says police host. They're on our radio channel, but they're really more of like a guide downtown to assist with questions, facilitate issues. They can also be eyes and ears, so if there is something that's concerning, they can get on the radio and notify dispatch more rapidly. But, you know, one of the concerns that has been expressed to us from the downtown corridor is a lack of police presence to any level, which, you know, is tough because the downtown corridor is very unique. And so we're trying to figure out ways to address that, just because we don't quite have the staffing to be able to put somebody down there kind of committed. You know, our long-term plan would be to have an officer who's kind of committed to that area, to work with businesses, to have a homeless outreach team, to be more of like a partner in solving some of these long-term issues. In the short term, yes, the volunteer host program would be, I think, a great bridge.
Do you think that you would be looking for educators, though? I mean, to be able to educate what bicycle training or things like that, which could save you?
Yeah, that would, I'd have to kind of look at what that would completely look like and what level of training we would have to provide, but I'm always open. If somebody wants to work for me for free, ring my door. I'm there.
I was thinking earlier when you mentioned it, because I go to different school sites as a member of the Board of Education. And I'm thinking, boy, that'd be a great opportunity, you know, to talk to kids about bike safety. So I'll reach out to you, you know, it might be good for some schools.
Yeah, and I think we have a few bike rodeos coming up where we set up an obstacle course and officers are out there, have the kids ride through it, and we talk about stop signs and safety and turn signals and all the things. And I'll be honest, I'm less concerned with our kids on bikes and with some older individuals, like students over at the campus who haven't been on a bike for many years and they show up and they're ready to roll.
Yeah.
So.
Thank you.
This is sort of a pet question I've had. Chief Vitale stopped doing ride-alongs a number of years ago. I wondered if you were going to restart that. And as a corollary, I've never met a Davis police officer except for you and Chief Vitale and maybe Doroshev and
Never gone to coffee with a cop?
I've never gone to coffee. And I'm a senior citizen too, so I can definitely do that. But I've wondered about ways that even our commission could meet the rank and file. The officers who actually patrol the street. And let them know a little, let them know a little bit about what this panel is supposed to be doing. And how it might, however indirectly, relate to the work that they do. So it's something that I've thought about and I don't know.
And I'd like to kind of address the fact that the CAB has actually had a tour of the entire building, and I discovered that nobody
Oh,
else
yes, you're
on
right.
here had been able to see exactly what the department looks like inside.
I've been to the window and that's about it.
There's not much to see there. Absolutely, 100%. I'd be more than happy to provide a tour of the building. I'm totally open to ride-alongs. It just kind of depends on staffing level and trainees. But yeah, of course. Ultimately, at the end of the day, this commission's intent and purpose aligns with mine. We both want a police department that the community looks at and trusts, and that they go, when they hear about something that's occurred in a state, many states away from us, that they go, not my police department. And so, yeah, absolutely. I think we can totally work something out, and more than happy to show you around.
Give you a call.
Okay, last question. Just, you mentioned the mental health and wellness, I guess the slide right before this. I'm just wondering if you could describe a little bit more about some of the resources that are available to officers, I guess just DPD personnel across the board, when there's one of these big incidents that kind of really affects the whole, department. And yet, obviously, in the last couple of years, I'm thinking about Officer Corona's death, and then obviously the May stabbings, what I talked about earlier. What's sort of the TikTok of the, the things that are told to officers and DPD personnel in terms of what's available to them after that.
Yeah, no, thank you for asking, because it's an important issue. So if we have a big critical incident, those ones are easy. Everybody can look at it and say that's a critical incident. But sometimes we forget about the call where somebody's baby drowned and the officer has to go and has to experience that and has to work through that. Or somebody's been stabbed and the officer has to, render aid and watch somebody maybe expire. Those occur. And so those can be a lot for somebody to absorb. And so we have what's called a peer team, which is essentially a group of peers, right, who are specially trained to kind of address when somebody's experiencing trauma, to be able to kind of walk them through that and to know where their boundaries are, where it's appropriate to maybe hand that off to the clinician. But we spent a lot of time. We were able to get a grant through the state to address that and provide them with more training and bring on people to that team. And when we do have those big critical, we do a critical incident stress debrief where we bring everybody together, and it's facilitated by these peer advocates and usually a clinician. And what we do is we kind of work through a process of talking about what occurred in their experience and, the impact that it may have on them. Obviously, we have a Corico app, which allows them to connect with a clinician if they want to talk to somebody who specifically kind of works with public safety. Not all clinicians can hear the trauma that these officers are bringing into the conversation. So it's very important that they're culturally sensitive to what that officer's experiencing. We just, through grant funding, we're able to create kind of a wellness room where officers can kind of go and have a moment of meditation, a moment of silence, a moment to kind of get centered. Another thing we're looking at, and we should be able to accomplish it also through this grant, is meditation, group meditation. And, we were able to kind of sit through some exercises with the facilitator who just serves public safety. And it was very impressive, the impact of kind of that group effect and being able to kind of center yourself and just focus on who you are, right? And that what you're experiencing is not always normal. But that there is a network of support to try and help you through that, as opposed to, 20 years ago where that just got piled into a closet. Because what we want is we want somebody healthy on the street because they provide good service. And so it's very important for me to put the front end effort into making sure they're in that space.
Thank you. And you bring up an aspect of this that I hadn't thought about before, but it seems important. Who makes the call and how is the call made for those sort of, sub a very large, very obviously, traumatic incident? So if it's one of those situations where it's, an officer was responding and they need to render aid, who makes that call that this is a situation that needs that kind of peer support? And then how is that call made,
Yeah, I mean, a lot of times that can be a partner who's aware that somebody was subjected to that call, and they'll reach out to the peer team and say, hey, you might want to check on so-and-so. Sometimes that individual will reach out to a peer support individual and just say, hey, I had a really tough call and I need.
So it's kind of like a referral that the person or someone who is aware of it can
Yeah,
make.
I mean, we're small but mighty, but we absolutely are very close knit. And so a lot of that is, kind of like I was talking about ABLE. It's making sure that we're looking out for each other in all aspects, not just that, we're on a call on the street. Yeah, that's absolutely important, our safety. But it's also when we're behind closed doors, right? Are we putting in the effort to make sure that we're all safe? And to do that, we have to be a family. We have to be a team.
Thank you. Other questions? Public comment on our discussion with our new police chief? Any final comments, questions from the commission?
Thank you.
Yes, thank you again.
Thank you.
Welcome. We know it's not your first time with us, but first time in this role. And yeah, like I said before, I think we look forward to this new era of relationship and the, different things that we can do in partnership and in service to our friends and neighbors here in Davis.
Thanks for having me.
Congratulations.
Yeah, oh, it seems like we have to just a little bit. So yeah, we are, as Mary is always very dutiful in reminding us, we are 9 minutes over our time budget, today. So I'll go ahead and motion, I'll be very brave and say till 45, because we only really have long range,
We don't.
We haven't done any.
but are we gonna, is that, yeah, I assume it's gonna be short, right? Oh,
No, it's in February, so it's coming.
okay, so let's go to 50 then. I motion to extend the meeting until 8:50. Is there a second?
Yes.
All those in favor, please say aye. All those opposed, please say no. Any abstentions? All right. Moving on, thank you again, Chief. Moving on to 7B, which is discussion of potential audit topics. I kind of forgot that we had put this on the agenda. Anyone, and I think Mike is still with us. Anyone want to, or hopefully Mike is still with us. Anyone have ideas about what our next audit topic should be? Just to cover, we've done, police use of force was our first one. We did 5150 response, which was the second one. And then we just had recently the hiring audit, which was recently concluded. Kelly? Oh,
I was just gonna say what you just said.
oh, okay, there we go.
And,
So,
and there's no requirement
Mhm.
that you guys do anything on this, but at the last meeting, it came up,
yes.
and so we just put it on the agenda. You can pass it on to a different meeting, or, you just let Mike do his thing.
Yeah, if we have no ideas, then we don't got them. But I do just sort of drawing an underline under what Kelly just said, we don't have to do this at all, but I think this is going back to, doing all that we can in service to our friends and neighbors in partnership with folks like Mike. This is something that Mike actually brought up. I think that some folks will remember in our review of his work, I think 2 or 3 years ago. Hey, there's this whole untapped portion of my contract that's just sitting around here collecting dust. So we'll push this to the next meeting. But let's try to over the holiday break, if you can manage to do so, think about what would be a good topic area. Obviously, I was a little busy between this meeting and the last one, so I didn't put too much thinking on that myself. I'll open up briefly for public comment for this item. Any public comment? Okay, anything final from the commission? Cool. Moving on to items 8, subcommittee updates, and as Commissioner Bliss forecasted, this is about our upcoming outreach event. This is a committee consisting of Commissioner Canning, Vice Chair Griswold, and Commissioner Sherman. Did y'all have a meeting between
We
y'all?
did not.
Okay.
We attempted to have a meeting, and I will tell you that some of the, part of what we're trying to do is to get groups, community groups to come and be part of this outreach. And it's been very difficult to get people to respond. I've tried things like suicide prevention of Yolo County, and I've got a message into NAMI, Yolo, and we were trying to think that maybe getting some representatives from Sutter ER, where people end up going sometimes, to come and talk about the services that they provide the community. And trying to get into the Sutter system is very difficult.
So,
And so I'm not sure what Griswold's gotten yet. We're gonna meet on Saturday, but it's been difficult getting people to talk to us, to contact people.
so I'm assuming we're using like the official,
Yeah, but I've, so for instance, with NAMI, I went through some other folks trying to get to their, executive director and board members.
and that,
We have board members on our city council.
Right.
Who I went to.
okay.
Yeah.
And that was not forthcoming?
I just haven't got a response yet.
Because that was gonna be my suggestion, this is Davis, and so, there's the official, Gmail, email for all these organizations, but then there's just, Susan over at the blankety blank, and so hopefully, I don't know
I
if
think it's the time of year.
No, I started weeks ago.
Oh.
Perhaps y'all have already done this, but, and then, as you said, y'all will meet on Saturday, so there's possibly some stuff that, Vice Chair Griswold has that we don't have available to us right now. But I would maybe see if y'all can, with some of those organizations, see if they're, beyond, NAMI, of course, if there are sort of, board contacts, staff contacts, friends of the organization that you can reach out to beyond the official
Right.
channels.
Right.
Other questions,
Mayor,
comments?
did you have thoughts?
No, I was just wondering if there's a title for this and that people
Yeah,
understand.
the title is gonna be, who you gonna call?
Right.
With that.
That's, we sort of talked.
And,
So far, the answer is nobody.
about.
Despite a valiant effort on Robert's part.
yeah, I would just be hopeful that by the first of the year, we'd be at least able to get some publicity out, so.
Good point.
Cause
Yeah,
it's getting
it's
really tight
getting, 2
again.
months.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's
months.
tight.
Where half of the month is gone. for
Yeah.
holidays.
Yeah, and, if we have to push it back, then we should make that decision.
Yeah.
Because I know, I just.
Did you guys say you were planning on meeting this weekend? Or did I make that up?
Yeah, we're gonna get together Saturday morning.
Okay, maybe after the meeting I could
Yes.
touch base with you.
Yes.
Other questions, comments,
So
concerns?
that's our report.
Yes, thank you. Any other, anything further on the outreach event? Public comment on this item? Anything further, commissioners? Yes.
I had just one other thought that, I'd like to throw out so we could talk, at least decide next time. When we did the outreach committee last October, that became our meeting for the month.
Right.
So that we could get everybody's commitment to show up at the
Mhm.
event. So I just am throwing it out if we might want to do that again in February.
I think it's a good idea.
Anything further? Okay. Let's see, Oh.
I have a thought.
on the next, on the, auditor
Not
subject?
on the.
Oh, go ahead.
Just quickly swinging back, to the issue of changing the, format of commissions and the mission of commissions. I plan to attend the council meeting tomorrow. And, it's not gonna be easy for us. It's scheduled, the subject is scheduled for 8:30 and they're never on time. So
Can we stick with the subcommittee reports right now? This isn't, we're not on that topic. Are you?
Yeah, I was wondering if you were gonna swing this, I don't know if you're gonna do a swerve over
No,
to.
no, the weave, no.
Right.
I just wanted to suggest that others, not only myself, attend the meeting and maybe get some idea of who would like to do that so that we can represent our commission in essentially asking the question, what is all this about and why is it being done?
Commissioner Sherman, I really need to stop you. So the agenda item that we're on right now is the annual outreach event, unless you're done with that.
I think we were kind of done with that, but yeah.
Then you're on the annual police
Yes.
auditor review subcommittee. That's what we need to talk about. So if you want to talk about something else in the long range, when we get to that, you can do it. I'm sorry.
Please, auditor.
Yes, I'm sorry, I was in the middle of a thought there, and then I got distracted, so, we wanted to set up the, audit review committee earlier, and then so we set that up in the last meeting, I'm just reviewing, I'm just talking out loud so that I can
Yeah,
recall.
we set it up last time
Yeah.
and confession. I forgot to tell Commissioner Skamia Greenwald that they asked for you to be on the committee. So you probably don't know that you're on that.
Oh, okay.
When did
So,
I,
yeah.
no, what happened was I said I would do it, but you weren't here to see if you wanted to. So I said, if you didn't want to, I would. And when you had her on there, I thought you would
I was
ask her. and
supposed to do that, but I did
So-
not, and I apologize, so.
Yeah.
Okay, so, so I guess that means the committee has not met yet. And so, Actually, I'll go ahead and add myself to this subcommittee. I didn't when we were having this discussion in November because there were things that I was waiting on. And yeah, we'll go ahead and report back in the January meeting. Anything further on the auditor review? Any public comment on the auditor review item? Moving on to our long-range calendar discussion. Items that folks want to put on future agendas. I feel like I had one, but then I lost it. Anyone have anything to put on the future agenda? Public comment, are we gonna bring up the?
I can get it.
Okay. Our long-range calendar. I guess that's it, yeah. I can't really think whatever it is, and if I do think of whatever it is, I'll bring it up to Elizabeth when we're having our agenda planning meeting in a couple of, well, actually, it'll probably be like next week or something with the holidays, right?
I just wanted to note that sorry, on the screen here, we go. So it came up, Commissioner Wilson just brought it up, I think. Somebody did, on the regular meeting for February. So
Oh,
we have
yes.
it here. We have the public outreach meeting currently scheduled for the 12th. The normal February meeting would be the 3rd. We can just kind of leave that as is right now with the question of, or the thought of having the public meeting on the 12th as the regular commission meeting and not having a meeting on the 3rd. Mary, was it you who brought it up? Sorry. We're blowing together at this point. It's been a long day. We don't have to make that decision right now, but that is, we can if you want. It's up to you guys.
Having it on the 12th as opposed to the 3rd.
Or just scrapping the 3rd meeting.
Oh, scrapping.
Yeah, so we wouldn't do the regular sitting in here meeting. We would have the public outreach meeting, and that
Oh, I
would be
see.
when you would gather for February, if you will.
Okay.
What I might suggest is leave it alone for the moment until we know for certain that we're good to go for February 12th. And assuming that we're going for February 12th, then you could cancel the 3rd. I hate to cancel it and then figure out that we actually need it. Trying to get people's schedules back is always difficult. Does that make sense?
Yes, it makes sense. I'm wary of a scenario where we are in the January meeting needing to cancel or forestall again the outreach meeting event for February. I hope that's not a situation that we're gonna end up in. But we'll, yeah, I think it makes sense to kind of hold for now. Other calendar items?
So I just want to note that the January meeting, we meet the first Monday of the month, so the January meeting is January 6th. That is after all of the holidays, but just want to make sure that folks are available for that.
It'll be a fun January 6th.
Well, there are other things that have happened on that day too.
Yep.
We'll hope for not a repeat of those.
Right.
So I can send an email out and just make sure that folks' schedules align with the 6th, but I'm assuming that they will. That's all.
The only other thing, and it's not, because I guess it's sort of an automatic agenda item, but usually we have in our January meeting, it's supposed to be an election, but we've never had an actual election. We always just nominated one person for each role, but it's our selection, I guess I should say, of our chair and vice chair for the upcoming calendar year. And so that would ordinarily be on the January agenda. Anything further? All right, I will entertain a motion to adjourn this meeting at 8:53, a couple minutes ahead. Oh, a couple minutes over. All those in favor? All those opposed? Any
Well, you
abstentions?
didn't have a second for the motion.
Well, I seconded it, thanks, everyone. Thanks, Chief, for joining us. And I didn't mistakenly say Deputy Chief once this evening. I was trying to not let it slip out.
It's all right. I still
Bye.
Thanks,
Thank you.
bye.
Aloha.
Aloha.
Thanks for the-
Aloha.
So all of these things that are potential.
Talk to the governor of Hawaii and let him know that we're not a hateful community.
I mean, like some of these things that we talked about today, or do they stay on in the
Yeah.
I'm not sure.
Yeah, some of them,
Because some of these things we discussed. I'm just
we
not-
discussed, but I think.
That's old news.
Sometimes you
I know,
have to
but-
know, you have to have been there. You have to like know that, like, for instance, I know this middle bullet is mine, or like, I just